The protagonist of our story is the strongest secret agent in the world, so skilled that he was promoted to become the personal bodyguard of the president. Just when he thought he could finally spend some time with his beloved sister after a long period of being too busy, he was shocked to receive the news of her assassination by a notorious gang. From that moment, our hero dedicated his life to seeking revenge against that gang and began his relentless pursuit of them. Many rumors are circulating about the formation of an opposing party to the government in the eastern region. The leader of this party does not appear or announce himself under normal circumstances, but may make exceptions to execute internal traitors and rebels. Inside an abandoned facility, a meeting is held for a military militia preparing to execute one of the traitors. Among them stands an elderly man, but he possesses a dangerous aura of authority. Observing the proceedings, the mask is removed from the guilty person's face, and it is announced that this individual represents a great threat to their glorious cause, and will receive the appropriate punishment. Execution by hanging. The leader tells the guilty person that the skill he possesses endangers any facility and is worthy of great admiration, but for this very reason, he must be executed swiftly. Only then will they be able to emerge as a unified force that the world has never seen before. Finally, he asks him if he has any last words before he is executed and leaves the world forever. The guilty person glares at him with hatred and says, "The cuckoo." The leader is somewhat surprised, so the guilty person continues, saying that from now on, there will be no cuckoo, or even its shadow. The leader laughs sarcastically, saying he is starting to babble nonsense. It's clear that the torture has done its work and taken its toll. He looks at one of the soldiers and orders him to proceed with the execution immediately. The soldier quickly pulls the lever of the execution machine, and the ground opens beneath the guilty person's feet. The leader smiles and asks them to watch closely to see the end of the person who was the greatest threat to them. However, something unexpected happens, astonishing the soldiers and causing them to call for the leader, who is about to leave. The guilty person, the hero of our story known as Lee Shin-hyuk, takes out a knife and starts skillfully cutting the execution rope. The leader is shocked and panicked but cannot react, as the soldier behind him is shot directly in the head, and so is the soldier beside him. The leader cannot understand what is happening here. It becomes evident that Lee has an ally helping him in his mission, as the knife Lee uses to cut the rope was given to him when he was led to the execution platform. One of the soldiers tries to aim at Lee, but another ally of Lee, Agent Liam, pounces on him, using a sharp knife to decapitate the enemy soldier. Lee's blonde ally, known as Chris, calls out to him and throws 2 pistols in the air. After successfully cutting the rope, Lee skillfully leaps off the execution platform and catches the pistols flying in the air. He begins aiming and shooting, accurately hitting his targets with ease and agility. Meanwhile, the leader tries to save himself and escape, but his escape attempt is blocked by Lee's third ally, the fighter Tamura. Tamura enters the enemy ranks with his strong body, eliminating them immediately. Another soldier stands terrified, unaware of what is happening around him, overwhelmed by his fear. He is standing behind Lee's fourth ally, Arataki, who easily and deftly injects the soldier with a poisonous substance, causing him to collapse instantly and begin to choke and die immediately. Arataki leaves him, confident of his imminent death, and says goodbye to the soldier in an emotionless tone. The leader notices that he is now standing alone among enemies and asks if this is a rebellion. He demands to know who they are and what they want from him. At that moment, the soldiers surround Lee from every side, pointing their weapons at him. Lee waits for the right moment calmly, then pounces on the soldier, hitting him and taking his weapon. He skillfully evades the shots from the rest of the soldiers, causing them to shoot each other. Lee looks around to assess the situation. He finds his comrades in control, along with the leader. Lee approaches Arataki and takes a headset from him. Arataki tells him not to forget the gas mask, but Lee ignores him. As soon as the leader sees Lee approaching, he panics and tries to escape, but Lee places the gun's muzzle against his head, paying no heed to the leader's cries for help, and kills him without hesitation. He then speaks into the phone, saying that the cuckoo is finished, and that all enemies have been eliminated. Lee takes the gas mask from Arataki and puts it on, instructing Chris to start dispersing the gas. Chris signals in acknowledgement, pressing the command on his electronic watch. Immediately, the gas begins to spread from all directions, filling every corner. Liam shoots again at a soldier who was still alive, telling Lee that this mission was unnecessary from the beginning. Chris, on the other hand, is impressed by Lee, saying that what he did was pure madness, to present himself as a Trojan horse to lure the target out, and then stand on the execution platform. These actions can only come from someone who has lost his mind. Tamura remarks that while the mission may have been noble, if it ends in Arohinga, it will have no meaning worthy of pride in one's life. Lee laughs, acknowledging the strength and skills of his team, who are part of the International Counterterrorism Force, the Secret Special Squad number 55, with 5 elite agents, handpicked from among the many black operatives around the world. Arataki notices another soldier still alive, shoots him, and expresses his annoyance, saying he thought they had eliminated all enemies. Lee looks at him and asks how many missions he has completed so far. Arataki responds that since joining the Special Operations, and up to joining Squad 55, he has completed a total of 76 successful missions. Lee coldly replies that confirming the death of the target involves ensuring the bullet settled in the head, or not, instructing him to closely examine the body to confirm it's really dead. Arataki nervously complies, saying he will do so immediately. Lee switches the headset to recording mode, stating that on December 24th at 8:30 a.m., the Eastern Region project was completely terminated, and the facility will be blown up entirely. Consequently, Squad 55 of the International Secret Special Forces has been disbanded, and Lee has become one of the world's top unofficial black operatives, the commander of Squad 55, now retired from field missions, and a member of the Korean National Intelligence Agency, within the black team known as the Black Tiger, in one of the underground political bunkers, comprising 5 offices in South Korea. Lee stands with his usual cold demeanor, greeted by Do-won Lee, the leader of the Black Tigers, who asks Lee how it feels to be dead to the entire world. Lee responds indifferently, saying he feels no different. Do-won tells him to stop with the dry attitude, acknowledging his effort and work in a hostile region. Lee aggressively responds, saying it was all just a job, so what's with the sudden sentimentality? Do-won laughs, saying Lee is still the same, walking straight into death. That's what makes him Vint Black. Their conversation is interrupted by the entrance of Choi Exo, who sternly tells them that the VIP agent will arrive now, and it's time to stop the chatting. The door opens, and the arrival of the president is announced. The president enters, appearing pleased to see Lee, asking him to step closer. He tells Lee, the agent from the Black Tiger team, that in recognition of his dedication and devoted service, he has been granted the title of Vint Black, the first of its kind among the elite agents of the Black team. The Vint Black represents mastery in enemy elimination, and from this moment, he has been discharged from service with the Black team and assigned the highest security mission in the country. This mission requires him to work as a bodyguard to protect the nation's leader and the president in secret. South Korean President Kang Byung-joon laughs at Lee, saying he is happy to meet him. He pins a distinctive badge on Lee, telling him that his life is now entrusted to him, and he trusts in him and his protection. Lee responds, saying that Agent Vint Black Lee will dedicate himself to serving and protecting the nation, and will protect the president at any cost. After finishing his meeting with the president, Lee calls his sister, Soman, who congratulates him on his new work promotion. Lee tells her that he's close to home now, and when he arrives, they can talk more. Soman laughs and tells him that she's at the airport now and is leaving the country. Lee is surprised and asks how and when, and how she decided that suddenly by herself. She hadn't been back for long from a business trip abroad and had not completed anything, and now she's traveling again. Soman apologizes, saying that the agency has finally allowed her debut for the first time, and she will be part of the Yoo Chaewon group, titled as her little sister. This will give her the opportunity to be a backup dancer for Chaewon, to gain enough stage experience during her musical tour in South America. Lee smiles and asks her, "This me Chaewon? Is she the reason for your excitement, that you'd travel all the way to South America with her?" Soman angrily asks if he's joking, and how could he not know who Chaewon is? She is famous in the K-pop world, one of the top artists who made it into the global rankings, and her songs break records. Now, his dear sister Soman will become the successor to the star Chaewon. Lee tells her that he isn't happy because he won't be there with her at these moments, but as long as she's happy, he's extremely happy for her. Lee tells Soman that she is his only family, and after being so busy and overwhelmed with work for so long, he had the chance to see her again, but now their paths diverge again. Soman tells him that when she returns, she'll cook a delicious meal for him, one that his heart loves, and she'll make spicy fried meat just the way he likes it. Lee laughs and asks her to take care of herself and stay in touch. Soman thanks him, telling Lee that she loves him very much and is grateful for his presence in her life. Lee laughs and says that he loves her too. This was the last conversation between Lee and his sister, before news of her death spread everywhere, due to her being part of Chaewon's group and being close to her. Lee falls into severe depression, locking himself in his apartment, isolating himself from the outside world, until the door opens, and someone enters the apartment. Lee asks why he came here. The person was Black Tiger's leader, Choi Exo, who yells at Lee, asking what he has done to himself. Lee emptily tells him that his company is doing well if he has time to follow up on retired people's news, and although he is no longer part of this nation. Commander Choi shouts at him, demanding that he pull himself together, saying that Vint Black agents are treated like living secret weapons, and even if this mission involved a famous artist like Yoo Chaewon, all the media are trying to keep the issue under wraps, and there was someone controlling what information is said or not said. Lee replies that all he managed to uncover is the name Bluff, with an unknown identity so far, and that this name is linked to a drug cartel based in South America, and no identity or witnesses have been found. Commander Choi tells him that his sister's death was a tragic accident, but it is in the past now. Lee responds with a sad tone that his sister was everything to him. Choi sympathetically tells him that he understands and knows what his sister meant to him, but what he's doing to himself is excessive and extremely dangerous to his health and mental state, asking him to remember that the location is in Brazil, and no one knows it better than him, and that South America is an area where deaths happen all the time. If he continues hiding like this, the company will have no choice but to eliminate him. Lee hears those words and becomes enraged, lunging at Commander Choi. He says in a terrifying tone, "Try and see if you can get rid of me." Commander Choi calmly asks if Lee will feel at ease or achieve what he wants by killing him here and now, also asking if Lee's understanding and judgment of the situation are really this weak. Lee throws the chopsticks he was about to kill Choi with to the ground, turns his back to him, and says that from now on, they have no connection, and Choi should stay out of his life. Commander Choi says that he really thought coming here, trying to make him aware and bring him back to his senses, was a mistake, but at least he has warned him now, and informed him of the consequences of his actions. Commander Choi says these words, leaves, and slams the door behind him. Lee looks at the ground and finds a paper or a business card. He picks it up, wondering if Commander Choi left it there on purpose, and looks back at the evidence he gathered, and is utterly shocked, because he finds that this card belongs to Soman and Chaewon's security company called Defenders. 1 year after the incident, at the National Airport, which is crowded with journalists and media due to the arrival of the artist Seon, her staff tries to keep people away from her, but the crowding is intense. One of the staff members tells his colleague that kids these days must be taking something like strength enhancers. This violence and strength are unnatural, and he should have just been standing guard from afar if not for this chaos. He tells his colleague that when they finish, they should go out for lunch and drinks. His colleague immediately agrees, saying that after such an exhausting day, they definitely need something to regain some vitality. He tells his colleague that he hates those fanatics who cling to any famous person for no reason. His colleague responds, saying he feels the same way, which is why he also hates this so-called Lee Shin-hyuk intensely. But their conversation is cut off when he notices a suspicious person in the crowd. His colleague asks what happened. He replies, saying the guy in the hoodie over there looks suspicious and is acting strangely, then shouts that he's pulling out a sharp object or a strange weapon. The crazed man runs towards Seon, violently colliding with the staff members and pushing them away. He runs towards Seon, saying that he came specifically for her and wants to give her something, asking her to pay attention to him. The staff tries to protect Seon and move her away, but she notices the crazed guy in the hoodie, and one of the staff members shouts for a guard to stop this man. At that moment, the crazed man feels someone grab him, then lifts him, and throws him forcefully to the ground. The fans' cheering stops as they are shocked by what they see in front of them. The guard says the situation is under control and that he needs support here. As expected, this guard is our hero Lee, who tells the crazed fan not to resist or move, or he'll put himself in danger. The fan in the hoodie asks to be let go, saying he's just a fan and didn't do anything. Naturally, this incident becomes the talk of social media and the press, with reports stating that an ordinary fan was attacked by a crazed guard, and that such oppressive actions were unjustified, and the entertainment industry in Korea is on a decline. The fan is seen crying, saying all he wanted was to give Seon a heartfelt gift, nothing more. Content creators strongly object to what happened, saying that a middle-aged man was attacked in this way, without any mercy or consideration, in front of the whole world, and that they are not mere fanatics who will accept being treated like this. At the headquarters of the celebrity security company known as Defenders, the company president, Baek Jun-wook, sits with Lee and yells at him, asking if he's happy with what's happening now, and if he is so eager to see the company declare bankruptcy. He tells Lee that he appreciates what happened last year in South America and his efforts there, but that incident was about to be forgotten and fade into the past, and now Lee comes and brings their company back into the spotlight with this action. Lee responds formally, saying he handled the situation based on the instructions in the on-site emergency incident manual. President Baek becomes furious and says to Lee, "What evidence? What kind of evidence are you talking about?" and asks him angrily and impatiently, what kind of evidence justifies throwing a fan to the ground in that way, hurling the remote control at the wall. But Lee doesn't flinch or even blink, telling the president that the fan had a weapon and could have threatened the safety of the person he was guarding. President Baek shouts, "What weapon? All he had was a pen, and he wanted to give it to the artist he admired as a normal gift." He yells at Lee further, asking how he will take responsibility for the avalanche of negative comments and complaints they received from the agency because of his reckless actions based on his so-called ridiculous evidence. Lee replies coldly, saying that if time turned back, and he found himself in the same situation, he would act based on the same evidence. President Baek loses his temper completely, reaching the peak of his anger, and asks Lee if he thinks things will go smoothly like this, adding that it was all because he was forced to accept the request to employ an unemployed man he didn't know, based on the recommendation of another prominent person he didn't know either. Grinding his teeth, he tells Lee that this is becoming unbearable. But their argument is interrupted by the entrance of the secretary, whom President Baek also yells at, asking if she has become blind and can't see that he's in an important meeting or what. The secretary, frightened, says she is sorry for the interruption, but it is about the CITRI Entertainment Agency. The president is shocked, shouting that things have escalated to the point of reaching CITRI Agency. At that moment, Ji Jin-hyuk, the director of management at CITRI Agency, enters and says to President Baek that he hasn't seen him in a long time, apologizing for interrupting an important meeting and arriving without an appointment. The president, flustered, tells him not to say such things, and that he is welcome anytime he wishes. Director Ji laughs and asks if the meeting wasn't too important. The president smiles, saying it wasn't important at all, then turns to Lee and orders him to leave immediately. Lee stands up at once without a word to leave. Director Ji notices him and says, "Aren't you the guard who recently became famous for his handling of fans?" Lee looks at him with lifeless eyes, waiting for him to continue. Director Ji says he really wanted to meet him and asks the president to allow Lee to stay. Lee sits back down, and the president asks Director Ji what he might want from their guard. Director Ji says it's a very good time and that he will explain right away, mentioning that as the president knows, the K-pop tour in South America is organized by the government from time to time. The president replies that he knows and asks if it's time for the tour now. Director Ji continues, saying that they indeed faced some unfortunate incidents in the past, but the market in South and Central America is vast and rich, and an agency like CITRI cannot afford to miss this opportunity. The president responds, saying that they take full responsibility for the past incident, and if given a second chance, they will make sure it doesn't happen again. Director Ji tells him that he came to ask for the help of Defenders once again, but this time with one condition, that they want Lee to accompany Chaewon. The president is shocked by the request, asking Director Ji who is supposed to secure whom, and why specifically Lee. Director Ji replies that this is a special request from Chaewon herself. The president tells him that Chaewon could choose another guard because Lee's contract was just terminated due to the charge of violent suppression against him. Director Ji is surprised and asks why the contract was terminated. At that moment, Chaewon herself enters and asks for Director Ji. President Baek is stunned when he sees her and asks Director Ji why she is here now. She says she heard the guard was here and wanted to make sure everything was going well. Director Ji tells her that he just found out that Guard Lee's contract has ended. Chaewon tells him that this is much better, as now she can take him directly. Director Ji asks what she means by this, and President Baek tells her that Guard Lee is still involved in a big problem. Chaewon informs them that Lee didn't cause an incident but managed to prevent a bigger one, and that the person causing all the uproar wasn't just obsessed with Seon, but had also been stalking her personally for a long time. President Baek asks her what she means by that. Chaewon tells him that if Lee hadn't apprehended him, someone else could have gotten hurt. She adds that she appreciates this so-called suppression, and she needs someone who puts her safety above all else. Someone who can protect her no matter the circumstances. She admits that she doesn't actually want to go to South America again due to what happened there, and traveling again really bothers her, telling Director G that he knows very well how much she suffered because of what happened. However, the company and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs insisted on sending her again, and since that's the situation, at the very least she should have the right to choose her personal guard, which is the least C3 agency can do after all the profits she's brought them. Director G approaches her, saying he understands and appreciates everything she is saying, adding that his position doesn't allow him to make such a decision alone, and at the very least, they need to discuss it at the agency. Chaewon is displeased, smiling coldly at Director G, telling him that if her guard isn't Lee himself, she won't go anywhere, and asks him to remember the kind of impact it will have on the company's shares if word gets out that she won't go on this tour. Director G reluctantly agrees, saying he will take responsibility for this decision and fulfill her request. The president says there's no need to worry at all because Lee's contract will be renewed immediately, and he will also be under his personal supervision. He looks at Lee, shouting at him, asking why he's sitting there without even greeting them or saying something appropriate. Lee doesn't reply and looks at Chaewon, and Chaewon looks at him and smiles, telling him that she has to catch up with her schedule, so she'll have to leave first. She looks at Lee again, saying that she'll see him in Brazil then, and leaves with Director G, leaving the president alone with Lee once more. After Lee finishes his conversation with the president and is on his way home, he receives numerous notifications on his phone, all of them being messages from President Bayek, telling him how much he loves him, that he's a treasure to the team, and how much he values him. Lee ignores them and doesn't respond. Lee hears a strange sound behind him, and he quickens his pace, and the person following him also speeds up. This continues for a while. Lee speeds up, and the person speeds up with him, until Lee feels the person getting very close. The moment the person tries to touch him, Lee grabs him with his hand and manages to take him down, flipping him to the ground just like he did with the fan earlier. The person, who turns out to be Dawon, winces from the impact, telling Lee that he's rough for using such a technique on a civilian. Lee replies that an ordinary person wouldn't follow him like that. Later, in a Korean restaurant, Lee and Dawon order a full dinner, while Chaewon's songs fill the place. Dawon laughs admiringly at Lee, but Lee looks at him with extreme reservation. Dawon breaks the silence, asking Lee about work, telling him that he put in a lot of effort to secure him a job in a place like this. Lee thanks him, saying that everything that happened was because of him. Dawon tells Lee that his appearance at the airport looked very cinematic, teasing him, saying that he might steal the spotlight from celebrities and become even more famous than them at this rate. He then asks about his plans for the next week, inviting him to return to the judo club, saying it's been a very long time, and they should get back to training again since it seems Lee still retains his skills and combat abilities. Lee responds curtly that he's going to Rio soon. Dawon is surprised and asks if he's really going to Rio in Brazil. Lee replies that he has a security schedule there. Dawon asks if he will be alright, especially since it's Brazil. Lee answers that he doesn't feel anything anymore, and, when he thought about it, realized that Dawon was right, that the living are better than the dead. Dawon tells him that if this will bring him peace, then so be it, but he should be careful, as the situation in South America has become tense and unstable, and that no matter where he goes, he should try not to make himself too visible. He points out that even if it's not apparent, the company is still keeping an eye on him, which is the price of being Vint Black. After dinner, Lee finally returns home. He enters his apartment to take a rest after a long day, noticing his sister's picture on the wall, and stands staring at it in pain. He thinks about how the Zika organization, the world's largest criminal alliance, has developed a new drug undetectable by modern technology, maintaining close relationships with the great powers, and controlling the black market from behind the scenes. There is also a mysterious figure believed to be the head of Zika, known as Bluff, who is said to have been heavily involved in the South American tour incident. Lee is almost certain that this person is responsible for the death of his sister, Soman, and this is the moment he's been waiting for a long time. If he becomes Chaewon's bodyguard, he will be able to get a lead. That will take him to the scum named Bluff, and through this way, he will finally reach the person responsible for his sister's death. Lee's expression hardens as he thinks about the identity of the one called Bluff, deciding that he will continue to pursue him even if he has to go to the ends of the earth. In Brazil's capital, Rio, a luxurious and beautiful place. Behind all this splendor lies the favela, a lawless area, completely desolate. Lee stands in front of a street child, striking him on the forehead to wake him up, revealing that Lee has finally arrived in Rio, Brazil. In a massive stadium studio in Rio, a concert for Chaewon was being held. The K-pop artist who rose fastest to global charts, and the longest K-pop artist ever to remain in these charts. She was nominated for more than 5 Grammy Awards, and won the title of Best New Artist, becoming an internationally acclaimed artist and star. Her world tour brought astronomical economic figures, estimated in the millions and billions of dollars. As a result, every corner around the world competes to host her and hold concerts in her honor. After Chaewon's first concert in Rio, she was on her way to her second scheduled appointment, accompanied, of course, by her trusted guard, Lee. Chaewon complains that she doesn't have time, even going to her next appointment in her stage outfit without being able to change. As soon as they arrive at the hall's door, Chaewon notices Lee stopped, asking if this was his first time doing overseas security. He formally replies that it's his first time guarding a global artist. Chaewon tells him to stay calm and follow her lead, saying she knows South America like the back of her hand. Lee listens to her words but remains silent, watching her. Chaewon opens the door, and as soon as she opens it, there is another world full of businessmen and prominent figures. Upon seeing her, A member of the Brazilian Federal Senate approaches, saying he can't believe he's seeing the global star Chaewon in front of him, and the Argentine diplomatic member in Brazil adds that it is a great honor for them. A famous businessman joins them, asking to take a selfie with Chaewon, saying that his granddaughter is a huge fan of hers. Lee watches them silently, focusing only on Chaewon, without intervening in anything else, until he hears a fourth person join them, greeting Chaewon and telling her how happy he is to see her here. Chaewon responds formally that the honor is hers to meet him, but she is surprised as the person gets very close to her, whispering to her that he wants to speak with her privately, as bluff. As soon as Lee hears this word, it's as if a bucket of cold water has been poured over him. This is the moment he has been waiting for. This is the person he has been searching for. So Chaewon was indeed the lead. But something seems suspicious. It's all too easy. However, Lee doesn't care about any of this. He just wants to take down Bluff himself. Suddenly a gunshot is fired, hitting the man in the head without any warning. The people in the hall scream, and the sound of gunfire echoes loudly. A group of armed men storms in, takes control, and starts shooting. The senator is shocked, wondering where the guards are, what they're doing, and why they aren't here protecting them. He angrily says that this country can never have an ordinary night. All while the body of the man claiming to be Bluff lies on the ground, bleeding. Lee is still in shock from what he witnessed, the confusion he faced, but he finally regains his composure and starts observing what's happening. Noticing that Chaewon is sitting alone in an exposed area, amidst all the gunfire, he runs towards her quickly with a black umbrella, opening it to shield Chaewon from direct shots, telling her not to be afraid or panic, and that he will ensure her safety and get her home securely. Lee continues to analyze and think, noticing that the gunmen have closed off the entrance and the road leading to the official car. He uses his security earpiece, saying he's in an emergency, requesting that the support vehicle be ready for evacuation. Two gunmen approach Lee and Chaewon, saying that Chaewon will come with them. Lee quickly closes the umbrella, using it as a weapon to protect Chaewon. One of the gunmen impatiently asks him who he is, but Lee doesn't give him a chance to talk, lunging at him with the umbrella and managing to disarm him, preparing to face him again quickly, then striking him hard in the face with the umbrella. When the gunman falls, Lee quickly runs towards the other one, charging at him aggressively, using the umbrella handle to skillfully and forcefully take his weapon, throwing it away, then ducking nimbly under the gunman, rising forcefully and hitting him in the jaw with his elbow, knocking him down. Chaewon is astonished, remaining utterly surprised, unable to understand how Lee is this calm in such a situation. Lee rushes to Chaewon, and she asks if he's okay, or if he's been injured, but Lee calmly replies that the place isn't safe, and they need to evacuate immediately. They exit through a different door than the one they entered from, running quickly before anyone realizes they've managed to escape. Lee secures the area, looking behind him to see if anyone is following. Noticing the gunman carrying the alleged Bluff's body away, Lee thinks that this might be a terrorist attack aiming to assassinate Bluff, but dismisses the idea, as it seemed too easy and happened in the blink of an eye. Finally, they manage to exit the mansion through a back door and reach the evacuation vehicle. The driver asks them about the emergency that occurred here. Chaewon sits in the car, trembling with tension, saying she doesn't understand why all these things keep happening to her, just like last year. Lee holds her arm, trying to calm her, telling her that everything will be fine and there's no need to worry, and all she needs to do is stay calm and follow the instructions they discussed earlier. After seating Chaewon in the car, Lee stands up again, looking around to ensure no one is following them. Lee closes the car door on Chaewon, and she is surprised, asking if he's not coming with them. He tells her that he will move separately. Lee instructs the driver to change the evacuation location to the temporary evacuation site quickly, and to proceed immediately to the highest priority. The driver is shocked, asking who exactly those people are. Lee tells him that the artist has been secured, but it's temporary security, and the driver's goal now is to cover the longest evacuation distance in the shortest time possible, as per the instructions, while Lee will be right behind them. The driver nervously agrees, telling Lee that he understands. Lee responds by saying that their lives all depend on his driving, which makes the driver even more tense, asking Lee not to pressure him. Shortly after, the armed gang catches up with them, starting to chase them, with their goal being to reach Chaewon by any means necessary. They charge recklessly, not caring about anyone on the road, and start firing heavily at the car carrying Chaewon. The driver tries to evade them, but they are indeed maniacs. Suddenly Lee contacts him, asking if he can hear him well, telling him that from now on, he only needs to listen. The driver, Wang Mobak from the second squad, says he hears him well, and asks Lee to tell him exactly what to do now. Lee shouts at him, saying he said to only listen, then tells him that there are currently 5 motorcycles chasing the car, and all of them have firearms and machine guns. Mobak curses, saying, "Where did these lunatics come from exactly?" Lee continues, telling him that he will count to 3, and when he reaches 3, Mobak must hit the brakes, and Lee will handle the rest. Mobak is stunned by the request, telling Lee he must have lost his mind, angrily adding that if he slams the brakes in this situation, they will all flip over, and asks if Lee really wants them to die. Chaewon is also shocked, asking the driver if Lee really wants them to stop, but Lee doesn't listen to them and begins counting. 1. He notices the gunman, and counts. 2. And they begin shooting at him, but Lee quickly says, 3. Mobak yells in frustration, "Which mental institution did this maniac come from exactly?" Then slams the brakes hard. Chaewon feels the car rapidly decelerate, screaming loudly. The car stops suddenly, but the gunmen are unable to stop in time, crashing into the car and falling off their motorcycles. The driver is terrified by what he sees in front of him. Lee, who had been farther back, increases his speed, approaching the collision site quickly, circling the area from a wider range, closely observing the gang's movements, pulling out his gun and starting to shoot at them, hitting the gang members directly, as they are still reeling from the crash. The driver and Chaewon are stunned, unable to believe what they're seeing. Mobak says that Lee is impossible to be human like them. Lee approaches the car after finishing the job, saying that the terrorists have been neutralized and eliminated, and that the artist can now be transported to the temporary residence. Chaewon looks at him, still shocked and amazed by what she saw. Finally, the car moves to take Chaewon to her residence, but Lee doesn't go with them. He removes his helmet and takes a deep breath, walking among the dead gang members, finding that one of them is still moving. He approaches to check if he's actually alive, and it turns out that the person is indeed alive, looking at Lee with fear and dread. Lee looks at him with deadly, terrifying eyes. Lee approaches the body of one of the gunmen, finding a tattoo on the inside of his lip bearing the Zika emblem. Realizing that Bluff is involved in this operation, he asks the still alive gang member where the real Bluff is. The gang member struggles to breathe due to his severe injuries but avoids answering Lee's question. So Lee gets closer and shoves his gun into his mouth without warning, saying he will ask him only once more, "Where exactly is Bluff?" The gang member provokes him, refusing to answer and telling Lee, "At your mom's." Lee looks at him coldly, annoyed, finding it hard to accept that Bluff might really be dead. The thought that the man in front of him chose to bite his tongue rather than speak makes Lee certain that Bluff is still alive and hasn't died. Lee then kills the remaining gang member, heading to the residence as dawn breaks. Lee sits on his bed, thinking about what happened. The man who was in the banquet hall is definitely dead, and just because he claimed to be Bluff, his life ended. The terrorist attack that took place was a purge of imposters disrupting their operations. A warning from Zika to the world. The Zika terrorists who were in the banquet hall or chasing them on the road, both times they wanted to abduct Chaewon. Even the person who claimed to be Bluff knew she would be there at that time and place, making it very clear that Chaewon is part of their target. But why would a global crime syndicate like them want Chaewon? His thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door. He opens it to find Chaewon, asking what brought her here at this time. She says that they managed to survive death by a miracle, and such a situation definitely calls for a celebration. Lee responds that he feels she would be better off resting in her room, as she was trembling like a drenched chick in the car. Chaewon stands there for a moment without responding, then laughs, telling him he's so cold, especially after going through such an unusual situation, an even non-routine event, yet behaving with such calm and rationality. She then tells him that some drinks with a K-pop star can be considered a thank you for saving her life, and opportunities like this don't come around often in one's life. She then asks if he is always this stoic and emotionless, adding that she is, of course, thankful for him saving her life today, but she was initially surprised by how formal he was with her, as if she wasn't a famous star. And even now, she still feels curious about why his expressions are always like that. Lee interrupts her, saying that whenever he sees her, she reminds him of someone. Chaewon is surprised, asking if he really knows someone who looks like her to this extent. Lee tells her that even she knows this person well. Chaewon thinks for a moment, trying to remember who it could be that they both know, and asks him to give her a hint to remember, but she suddenly falls asleep, dropping her phone, and Lee catches it before it hits the ground. He looks at her, sleeping deeply, wondering how she managed to fall asleep so quickly, remembering his sister, Soman, who used to behave just like her, feeling sorrow and pain. He returns to thinking again about how Chaewon was the center of today's attack, but regardless of the reason for this attack, things will remain as he planned from the beginning. Since joining the security company, he will stay very close to Chaewon, continuing to use her as bait to lure the syndicate. Chaewon's phone rings at this moment. Lee tries to wake her up to answer, but she gets annoyed and asks him to let her sleep a bit more. However, she suddenly opens her eyes in fear, jumping up so fast that she almost falls. Rushing to grab her phone and answer the call, she sees that the caller is the company president and tells him that she is awake and fully aware now, then puts the phone on speaker and places it on the desk. President Kim Chul replies with concern, asking if she's all right. Chaewon snaps at him, saying that she already told him she didn't want to come to Brazil for this exact reason, and demands that he stops whatever he is working on, and sends a private jet to get her out of here before she loses her mind and cancels her contract. President Chul becomes anxious, asking her to try to calm down first, saying he understands and sympathizes with her feelings. He tries to defuse the situation by joking that there is something wrong with this place, and it seems to specifically target her. But this deal involves astronomical costs. Chaewon yells at him, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about? What happened just now was a disaster in itself, and you need to cancel all my appointments and schedule immediately." President Chul tells her that this has now become a national issue. Chaewon is surprised by his words, asking what good any of this is if it ends with her death, then looks at Lee and asks for his opinion, saying that this is enough reason to file a lawsuit against the agency if they don't get her out of this place. President Chul is stunned when he hears the mention of a lawsuit. Lee finally speaks, introducing himself as Chaewon's personal bodyguard, saying that staying in Brazil poses serious threats, and that the terrorists who failed to abduct Chaewon will attempt to target her again. If that happens, it will indeed become a national issue. President Chul becomes even more tense, unable to respond. Chaewon continues, saying that's enough, and that regardless of what happens, they will return to Korea tomorrow, and that this is the final decision with no room for debate. Chaewon's words don't matter much to Lee, as the Zika organization may be based in Brazil, but it operates on a wide global scale. Once they have a target or single out someone, they never hesitate. No matter where that target is on the surface of the earth, they will find them in the end. President Chul ends the call with Chaewon, saying that keeping her in South America is no longer possible. Deputy Minister Park Jung-soo becomes furious, shouting at him, asking if he's ready to see his silly entertainment company completely shut down because of his ignorance and incompetence. President Chol becomes nervous and apologizes to Deputy Minister Park, but there's nothing more he can do. Deputy Minister Park becomes even angrier, feeling frustrated, wondering how he will report this news to his superiors now. Elsewhere in Brazil, specifically in the prisons of Rio de Janeiro, a fight was taking place between two inmates, a violent and bloody battle, and it was obvious that the two hated each other intensely, each wanting to kill the other. The rest of the inmates were extremely excited, thrilled to watch the bloody fight unfold. During the fight, with the prisoners gathered around, one of the prison officers walked by, but he was uninterested in what was happening, heading instead to a particular cell. Once he reached the dark, isolated cell, the prisoner inside was busy carving a statue, focused on his work with precision, not concerned with anything else, until the prison officer called his name. The prisoner accidentally broke a part of the statue, though it didn't ruin the sculpture's shape, and then looked toward the source of the voice calling him. The prisoner speaks calmly and with authority, telling the officer to speak. The officer nervously says that he carried out the order as requested and managed to eliminate the imposter who impersonated him and tarnished his name. The prisoner asks him to repeat what he said. The officer becomes even more tense, quickly apologizing, then continues, saying that unfortunately, they were unable to capture the singer Chaewon. The prisoner gives him a deadly and terrifying look, asking if that means he failed. The officer looks down, saying that a pursuit team has already been sent, and they will certainly be able to capture her within the next 12 hours. The prisoner responds that Chaewon is now on her way back to her country, and from now on, the matter will be handed over to the other branches. The officer becomes frightened, stammering, and asks the prisoner to reconsider, trying to justify his position, saying that any intervention in Korea might have consequences. But the prisoner's terrifying look cuts him off and he says, "Thank you for your services." The officer raises his head slowly, confused by what's happening. But before he can say another word, the prisoner punches him violently in the chin, telling him in a frightening tone that he said, "Thank you for your services." The officer trembles, begging the prisoner for just one more chance. But there's no room for negotiation. The prisoner uses his carving knife, striking the officer forcefully, delivering a fatal blow and killing him instantly. The prisoner then leaves his cell, walking away from the spot where the officer was killed, going to another prisoner's cell, asking if he heard what just happened well, and telling him that he now has 2 weeks to bring Chaewon to him. Inside one of the cells, there is a bugging device, and someone else in another location hears everything. This person is one of the prisoner's strongmen, and his followers ask him to leave this mission to them, but he doesn't respond, keeping his eyes fixed on a picture of Lee with Chaewon in the banquet hall. In the end, he replies to the prisoner with terrifying resolve, saying that he will carry out this mission himself. A week after the Rio incident, at one of the variety show filming locations, Chaewon is in the midst of shooting one of these shows. The host asks her about her opinion on Korean street food, after having spent a long time on tour outside the country, and asks her to give her honest and transparent opinion. Chaewon takes a bite, laughs, and says that this food was exactly what she was missing in her life, and that it tastes so delicious that she now understands why the agency insisted on her presence, even though she hasn't yet finished her tour abroad. After that line, the director calls for a short break. President Chul approaches Chaewon, bringing her a cold juice, asking if she is having a hard time filming in this heat, handing her the juice, and asking her to drink it to regain her energy. Chaewon looks at him impatiently, asking when she will be allowed to rest, and for him to stop bothering her for a bit, telling him that she isn't annoyed, and that he should go take care of the director and the rest of the crew. President Chul forces a smile, unable to understand what's bothering her this time. However, Chaewon looks elsewhere, and something catches her eye. She thinks that the security guard standing far away is Lee, feeling excited and calling out to him, thinking it's Lee, but when he turns around, it turns out to be someone else entirely. Chaewon feels embarrassed, and keeps thinking about Lee for a bit, wondering where he has disappeared to all this time. She's been sending him messages for a long time too, but he hasn't replied to any of them, leaving her feeling upset, not knowing what his reason is for disappearing like this. The crew notices her demeanor, talking about how she seems to be in a bad mood these days, but they excuse her because what she went through wasn't easy, and no one wants to say anything that might upset her for fear of being kicked off the crew entirely. In the meantime, a man with a cart of iced drinks passes by, walking through the middle of the filming site. One of the crew members stops him, telling him he can't pass through here because they are filming in this area and have a permit from the government. The cart owner becomes angry, saying, "What permit are you talking about? You're just disrupting the neighborhood with this so-called filming." Another crew member steps in, trying to prevent the argument, apologizing to the cart owner for the inconvenience, and the man leaves without any word or greeting, entering the parking lot of a nearby building, stopping right in the middle of the area, in front of a large truck and 3 other people. One of these people goes over to the box on the cart, opening it without any preamble, finding many bladed weapons inside. It becomes clear that this group is a kidnapping and assassination team affiliated with the Zika organization's eastern branch, known as the Night Dew, and their previous mission was to assassinate an important figure in Myanmar. A girl says it's been a long time since they last gathered like this, and when they do, it's to kidnap a K-pop artist. This is a real downgrade for them, honestly. One of them asks the leader if Chaewon's truck is also here. The leader tells him to calm down and not make a sound, looking around and listening carefully to see if anyone is there with them. The bald gang member says they are being watched, and there's someone tracking them from 80 meters away. The girl is surprised, asking how they could be under surveillance. Another person asks if the one tracking them is the same guard from the photo, wondering how he even found their location. The bald man says the distance is now 50 meters, and that the person is approaching them quickly. The leader tells them to be completely silent, but he doesn't see or hear anyone, telling them they need to take him out first, and to execute the four-way formation to surround him from all directions. The team members nod in agreement. The bald man says the target is now only 30 meters away. The gang members move quickly to take their positions, each standing in their designated spot, ready to surround their target from all directions, leaving no point of entry. The bald man says the target is now 15 meters away, and at the moment he enters the four-way trap, they'll be able to take him out in a second, using their sharp, poisoned weapons, which make anyone say goodbye to life from the first touch, dying before they even realize they're dying. The bald man is shocked when he senses someone standing behind him, but before he can turn around, Lee restrains him and calmly orders him to stay still and not move, telling him that any sound he makes will cost him his life. The bald man is surprised, realizing he had no time to do anything and didn't notice Lee at all. And when he tries to move, Lee uses his knife, preparing to stab him mercilessly. But when another gang member notices them, he rushes towards Lee to kill him. Lee notices the movement, and with lightning speed, spins the bald man around to take the attack instead of himself, using him as a shield for protection. The gang member is stunned by Lee's quick reaction, realizing how he managed to break their four-way formation. The gang member decides to retreat, trying to rejoin his team, trusting in his own speed, thinking Lee won't catch up. But unexpectedly, Lee is faster than him, and reaches him within seconds. The gang member is shocked, as he had left a considerable distance between himself and Lee, yet Lee still managed to catch up, realizing that at this pace, they could all meet their end here. Lee strikes him with the knife, severing his neck tendons in seconds with precision. The leader notices what happened and realizes that Lee isn't just an ordinary bodyguard, as he was able to identify their formation from the start, causing a disruption that threw them off balance and broke their communication with each other. But no matter what happens, the mission must continue to the end. This is what it means to be part of the Night Dew team. The leader lunges at Lee from behind, intending to kill him with a single blow. But Lee notices the attack, and with smoothness, grace, and skill, evades it, and counters with a swift attack, stabbing the leader several times in vital areas. The leader is so overwhelmed that he can't comprehend what's happening, saying, "How can our team, the Night Dew, be defeated this easily?" Lee replies, stating that the basics of covert assassination involve the assassin hiding in the shadow of their opponent, which is exactly what they were all trying to do. But Lee, of course, managed to uncover it, and was able to use it against them, leaving them with no way out. After finishing off the leader, Lee notices that something is still moving, and starts walking towards the source of the sound exactly. It turns out the girl was hiding, unable to understand how a monster like him could exist, and only work as Chaewon's bodyguard. She realizes she must try to get out of here and inform Commander Heihachi by any means possible, attempting to escape the area in any way. But she's shocked by what she sees in front of her, seeing Lee standing there waiting for her, not understanding how he found her. Lee speaks to her calmly and firmly, saying he will give her two options. The first is to tell him who she takes orders from, and if she does that, he will let her go in peace. The second is to follow her comrades who just met their end. The girl takes a poison pill, telling Lee not to think she'll ever confess or tell him the way, and in seconds, she collapses to the ground, the poison taking effect. Saying, "Glory to Zika." Lee gets slightly irritated, saying she's stupid for swallowing the poison like that. He looks at her lower lip, finding a tattoo with the name, Zika. Lee's expression hardens, realizing that if the gang members find themselves in a dangerous situation, they commit suicide to avoid giving away any information, and also understanding that Zika has already reached Korea. Elsewhere, at the same time, President Choi opens Chaewon's trailer, telling her that she worked hard today, and that it must have been a very long and tiring day for her, especially since she just returned from her tour and hasn't been able to rest yet. But Chaewon doesn't respond, so he tells her he will leave her alone to rest for a bit, closing the trailer door and leaving. Chaewon opens her phone, checking if she received any calls or messages from Lee, but finds nothing, saying that this situation is extremely annoying and unbearable, making her anxious and angry. Her thoughts are interrupted as the trailer door suddenly opens. Chaewon is stunned to finally see guard Lee appear in front of her, asking him irritably where he's been all this time and why he suddenly appeared now. Lee replies that he was fulfilling his duties. Chaewon gets angry, starting to shout at him, saying, "What duties are you talking about? You're showing up now after disappearing for an entire week without a single word to me." Lee maintains a firm and calm expression, speaking to her gently, telling her that if she wants to live, she must listen to him. Chaewon is surprised by his serious tone, but she refuses the envelope he's trying to give her, saying angrily, "What do you mean if I want to live I should listen to you? Do you think I'm that reckless and impulsive?" Lee looks at her calmly and seriously without replying, but the envelope falls to the ground, revealing several strange photos. Chaewon notices them and feels curious to see what they are, and when she opens the envelope and takes out the photos, she's shocked and terrified by what she sees, asking Lee in fear and panic what these photos mean. Lee looks at her cautiously and begins explaining what happened. That since last week, when they returned from Brazil to Korea, there has been a group of people trying to target her and monitoring her since then. Chaewon panics, asking why this is happening and who these people are, and starts trembling with fear and anxiety once again. Lee tells her that these people belong to an organization called Zika, suspected of having their main base in South America. But this organization is considered an international global crime syndicate. Chaewon tells him that they should inform the police. Lee takes the phone from her, telling her she needs to get a hold of herself because this organization is not only deeply embedded in the police, but also has relationships and contracts with many institutions, as well as high-ranking officials in the country and all around the world. Chaewon responds in fear, saying this is impossible, that she can't believe something like this, and asks him about his true identity. Lee tells her sharply and confidently that his only goal right now is to reach Zika and catch them, and that he agreed to be her bodyguard to pursue them. Chaewon is shocked by his admission and surprised. Lee continues, telling her that he joined the security company she was contracted with and caused a big stir when he captured the person who was following her, to gain her attention. Chaewon responds calmly, asking if that means he has been using her from the beginning. Lee replies coldly, saying, "This has been a deal from the start. I use you to find them, and you use me to protect you from them." Chaewon says quietly and sadly, without even looking at him, that he has been using her as bait for them from the beginning, and now he wants her to trust him easily. Lee tells her arrogantly and confidently that she misunderstood, and that he disagrees with her on one thing. She now has no other choice, because no matter where she hides or where she goes, this group will keep pursuing her, even if she goes to the ends of the earth. Chaewon responds firmly and confidently, saying that she is Yu Chaewon, and it hasn't been easy for her to reach where she is now. Lee tells her that there's no other solution for this situation, but she interrupts him, telling him to leave, her tone calm and deadly, telling him that he's now fired. Lee looks at her angrily but doesn't respond. Shortly after this incident, Chaewon practices one of her performances, which will take place at a charity event for children with incurable diseases. The training is intense and exhausting, but Chaewon has to push herself because there is little time left before the performance. President Chul enters, and Chaewon asks where the rest of the crew has gone. He informs her that they've all left, and her belongings have been moved separately to the waiting room. Chaewon is surprised and says she didn't mind having a meal with them, but it's all right, they can make it up another time. The president asks if they can talk for a bit, and Chaewon asks, "What do you want now?" asking if he doesn't see she's training for her performance. The president looks towards her security team, saying he just doesn't understand why all of this is necessary. Chaewon responds, "What do you mean by all of this? I should be the one asking. Where was the company while I had to personally request this armed security team myself?" President Chul becomes concerned, telling her it's a bit of an overreaction, but Chaewon ignores him, going to the dance team and asking them to resume from where they left off, thinking that it doesn't matter whether Lee's words were true or not, but if they were, then a single guard or two wouldn't suffice. While Chaewon is practicing her performance, some armed individuals enter the building, clearly members of a gang and very strong. The security guard standing at the training hall entrance stops them, saying no one can enter without authorization, but the gang member doesn't negotiate and hits the guard. He hits the guard violently with the machete he has, and this person is one of the members of the eastern branch of Zika, from the Mongol contracted team, known as Bankar. Chaewon's training is interrupted, and she is surprised by what's happening, seeing that the place has been breached and a group of people entering the training hall, rushing towards the security personnel without fear or hesitation. One of the security members asks, "Who are you, and what do you think you're doing?" One of the gang members charges at him. The security member tries to draw his weapon, but the gang member is faster and lands a strong blow. Chaewon and the dance team stand terrified by what's happening, especially Chaewon, who is in a state of panic and extreme fear, seeing what's happening in front of her as the security personnel fall one after the other. She recalls Lee's words about how these people would target her even if she went to the ends of the earth, and this is exactly what's happening now, as the gang members overpower the best armed security force she could hire, reaching the stage, and one of them is about to get to her, but a security member stops him, delivering a strong punch to his face, attacking him with consecutive punches, not allowing him to defend himself or retaliate. After taking him down, the security member stands ready for any further attack, watching the battle happening now, seeing that these gang members are fearless, not afraid to attack such a wide-open place, and in broad daylight. Something like this is only done by terrorists. While thinking, one of the gang members tries to attack him, but the security member successfully blocks it, reporting the incident and requesting the emergency exit be secured and the client evacuated immediately, then turns towards the gang member and starts fighting him. He takes advantage of his smaller size compared to the gang member, managing to evade his attack and charging at him with great force, lifting him and preparing to slam him to the ground, but he is shocked by what he sees. His colleague's head is severed, held by one of the gang members who says, "The heads of these guys are worth $2,000 now." Another member responds, saying that if they bring more than 5 heads, the price goes up to $2,500 per head. And the third gang member adds, saying that this time, each of them should get a brand new Ferrari. The three stand without fear, enjoying the killing spree. The security member becomes furious, losing his temper and charging at them without any forethought. As expected, the gang member Asher cuts the stick the security member was holding with his sharp weapon, completely stopping the security member's attack. Then he starts attacking him, saying that he smells like baby powder, which is too boring for him to enjoy the fight. He succeeds in landing a direct blow to the security member's neck, killing him instantly, and sarcastically says, if someone can't cut their opponent's neck, they shouldn't think of themselves as an unrivaled protector. Then he looks towards Chaewon and calls her, but she is in another world, thinking that she is the reason for all these people dying and the cause of everything that has happened here. However, she starts to pull herself together and not break down, telling the team to stand behind her. Her words are interrupted by someone grabbing her hand, and it turns out to be Yama from the gang members, mocking her by saying she's very weak. Chaewon hits him with the microphone she's holding with all her strength, but he laughs maniacally and tastes the blood dripping from him. Chaewon is shocked, realizing that no matter what she does, she can't stand against these people. Yama approaches her and asks the gang leader if he can make her sing a bit so they can confirm whether she's really the one. The leader responds, while engrossed in killing another security member, that he doesn't mind, but the singing must be live with no sound effects, so they can enjoy it as they kill. Yama gives a creepy smile, saying that's exactly his taste in music. Chaewon feels terrified and starts trembling, wishing for anyone to come and save them from this situation. And indeed, suddenly, Yama is struck on the back of his neck and falls to the ground, losing consciousness immediately. The rest of the gang members turn towards the source of the noise, shocked, finding someone dressed in a bear costume, holding 2 knives and ready to fight. The gang members charge at him, determined to kill him. But the bear skillfully and smoothly dodges them, counter-attacking with incredible speed, and begins cutting them down one by one without stopping or giving them a moment to comprehend what's happening, eventually managing to take down a large number of them. Then he stands in front of Chaewon, who is still in shock from the situation, and removes the bear head he's wearing, revealing that the person is indeed Lee, as expected. He tries to catch his breath calmly, telling Chaewon that he told her to listen to him.